Close this one up. Okay, and this is 4.3, still in preschool years, but now we're into the social and psychological development. So I think we have most people back. So during this time period of our preschool years, they're learning who they are and developing that self-concept. It's really developing a lot more than it did previously, starting with Erickson as our researcher. Remember his H-stage theory. Initiative versus guilt. This is ages 3 to 6. So children will try things, and depending on how people react to what the child did can possibly cause guilt. Um, Children want to succeed.
Professor?
Yes.
Professor, I'm so sorry. I can't see the whole screen. It's just like a gray
Okay.
line halfway down. I don't know if it's just me or.
Okay, let me
I
try to
can't
get
see it
a.
either. So
Okay.
not
Oh,
just
thank
you.
you. Thank you for letting me know. Let me get out of this and see if this is going to be better. Thank you. Like I said, I can't see anything once I go to that, so let's try sharing again. Is that better?
You're good.
Yay. Yeah, it'd be very boring if you had to just listen to me the whole time, without having at least some visual to go with it. So, okay, back to that. So Erickson's stage then is initiative versus guilt for ages 3 to 6. And, they want to try things by themselves, so make things available, things like having a cup and being able to pour something into that cup. Okay, well, don't give them a glass cup, give them a plastic cup. So if they do drop it, it's not going to be this horrible experience. There was this great Bounty commercial. I haven't ever been able to find it on YouTube, but it was perfect for this. Mom had just gone to the store, and this child saw the 2 liter bottle and was, didn't realize that, with some of the jostling in the car, the pop was shaken, and goes to open the pop and it like sprays everywhere. And the mom turns around and goes, Billy. And the child is like terrified. And she turns around and she grabs the long faucet, from the sink. And he goes, this works better. And she sprays her kid. And he takes the pop and shakes it up and sprays his mom. And they have this battle back and forth in the kitchen. And then the two of them work together and clean up the mess, and they laugh. That is an awesome way to treat that situation, because that child tried to do something on their own and failed because they didn't realize that that pop was going to do that when they went to open it. They never had that experience. So the mom in that situation handled it perfectly. Even if she wouldn't have done the spraying, just, it's okay, Billy. Let's just clean it up together. And that's how we got it into a Bounty commercial, because they were, of course, using Bounty to clean it up. But that no guilt because they tried something new actually fosters independent acts and them trying again. If they would have been screamed at, yelled at, don't do that, why'd you do that, etc. It might have been a very long time before they would have tried anything on their own again, because they don't want to, have the parent be mad at them. They don't want to not succeed. This will help them to make good decisions and to grow in that self-concept of them, who they are and what they can do. Preschoolers do tend to overestimate their skills and their knowledge. Nothing unusual there. We learn as we get older. Some of us as adults sometimes, will overestimate our skills and our knowledge. But this view, this positive view that they have can be shaped by the culture. In, the Asian culture, we have a more collective view, more uh, family dynamic, working for the whole, whereas in Western culture, we see a more individualistic orientation. So that sense of being independent and doing things on their own is very important here, like in the United States and Western culture. They develop a sense of what male is or female. Again, whether or not parents use any type of gender stereotyping or they try to prevent it, usually by the age of 3, children know the gender stereotypes already. At this age, boys are still playing with boys and girls are playing with girls. And they do develop some gender expectations for appropriate behavior of what little boys do and little girls do that is in line with what the culture says. So males tend to show more independence. They tend to be more forceful and competitive at this time. Females tend to be more warmer and more nurturing, more expressive, but in some parts still somewhat submissive. And children can hold those gender stereotypes that adults do. So if they're exposed to that at home, then there's a possibility the child is going to have those same gender stereotypes. Biologically, there are differences in hormones between boys and girls, physical characteristics, brain development. Girls, go through the growth spurt about 2 years before boys. We see that more in the next group when we get to the middle childhood than we see here. Uh, there are, again, expectations of what uh, they should be doing. It can be based on what they witness on TV or on the internet or what they see in their own home or in their groups, their community. And they have this sense of identity. Who are they? They develop what we call a gender schema. Remember, schema is, how Piaget said that we retain knowledge in our long-term memory, that we add to it, and we make an accommodation if there's something that's different that we experience, then we make an accommodation to the schema that we already have in our long-term memory. We assimilate something if it's similar to what we already know. And these gender schemas, like I said, are pretty much developed by the age of 3. Lawrence Kohlberg, and we mentioned him before last week. Kohlberg is the researcher who did moral development, and he said preschoolers believe different things based on appearance and behavior. And he found that he says that males and females have certain characteristics and they are in agreement when it comes to moral development. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more. But Kohlberg's research was done on all boys. So when we get to middle school, we'll talk about his research. but he basically made the assumption that boys and girls are the same in all ways. Sandra Bem's research was very cutting edge at the time. She believed that parents should bring their children up to be androgynous. In other words, to have the characteristics of both gender roles as a well-rounded child, which would, she said, lead to a well-rounded adult. So review, sample question, sample question. Family and friends for preschoolers. By the age of 3, children are developing real friendships. They know who they like. They feel comfortable with them. They see, these other people have special qualities. And usually it's connected to things that they have in common. They play the same games. They like to do the same thing or watch the same thing. They're focused basically on the activities that they participate in. They're not necessarily larger groups. They can be smaller groups. And, Vygotsky talked about it, and Patton also did research on the role of play. And I mentioned last time one of the things that regrettably, in some ways, is taken out of many of the schools. They've taken out recess and that free time in order to throw in an extra computer class or an extra science lab. And not that those things are bad, but they're ignoring the educational psychology research that shows that children do learn through play. And so few of our children, sometimes they're actually engaging in that because they're at home or they're on their screens or they're doing anything but being with other people. So there are different types of play. Functional play is just simple, repeated activities, jumping jacks or, jumping rope or playing with a ball. Or constructive play is like building things. So, most preschools and kindergartens have building blocks, uh, uh, lock and link sets, um, you know, different things that they can be creative and actually build something, not necessarily together. They could be building their own thing. It helps with motor skills, it helps with problem solving, and it can help support cooperation between children and adults. Again, other aspects of play, parallel play, two children right next to each other doing the exact same thing, not engaging with each other, but doing the exact same thing. So they're both building a tower. Okay, parallel play. Onlooker play, children can learn from watching others play. So just standing back until they feel comfortable, and then they may want to engage. And we would call that associative play, where they join in to whatever a group of people might be doing. And then there's cooperative play, where they have to work together in order to accomplish a goal. These are some skills that you need as an adult. So these early influences can be very, very important. And Vygotsky argued that even things like pretend play can expand cognitive skills. Now, you don't have to tell me out loud, but did you have an imaginary friend and you pretended to play? Research actually says that's a sign of high intelligence. You aren't crazy. You are acting out your imagination. So even things like pretend play, pretending you're a chef and you're cooking on that stove, or you're outside, pretending you're a great uh, softball player and you're throwing the ball against like a backstop or a wall and catching it. Simple things like, or a little, um, like a basketball hoop in front of a trash can with a little Nerf ball, pretending that you're on a team like that. And the culture also depends that too, based on, what is, mm, I hate to use the word normal, but more accepted in a particular culture. Something, in Eastern culture may be something completely different from us in Western culture and vice versa.
Professor.
Yes,
So the last slide, can you just give another example of associative play?
sure. It's actually joining in and doing things with other people. So it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a game or an activity or something creative like, coloring in a coloring book, uh, standing up for like show and tell, like bringing stuff in to show the rest of the students in class, that type of associative play, getting involved, not necessarily with one specific person. It could be with one, but it could be like with a whole group. Does that help?
Yes, thanks.
Sure. So all these, differences can help develop that understanding of what children are thinking about and believing and how the mind of a child operates. It operates much different than adults, but children can, explain how they think and what other people think. They're starting to look at other characteristics. They can assign attributions like that person's, you know, kind, that person is helpful, that person is mean. So they could be positive or negative attributions. They can see now the other person's perspective in their limited view. They're not going to give you all the details of what someone else thinks, but they can understand what the other person is saying that they believe. They can understand someone's motive. Like, well, why did you push me? Well, I wanted that toy. I would have shared. All you had to do was ask. Oh, can I play with that toy? Yes, here you go. And they understand why they got pushed. Not that pushing was a good thing, but they can understand why the person did it. So, what are some of the limits here? A 3-year-old's understanding of belief is incomplete. It's not a full understanding. It can be somewhat false. It's what they think the child believes. But by the end of preschool, they have it figured out. So by the time they're in like 5, they're good. They can understand a lot more. Children that have autism do have a problem with that, and it's not necessarily only in these simple tasks early on in life. It can be something that they have trouble dealing with the rest of their life, depending on where they're at in the spectrum. So they can have some difficulty relating to others. And you have to go slow. You have to go very slow when it comes with working with children with autism. But strides have been made, and there's tons of research out there for parents that have children who have autism. But it depends on the child. Every child is different, and where they're at on the spectrum is completely different also. And every situation is a one-on-one. Okay, how do we help this child be the best that they can be? Cultural differences can make a difference. The culture that a child grew up in can help affect what their interpretations are of other people. Families are more complicated now than they used to be, in my generation. You had your father, mother, and your 2.5 children. And that was your basis. And so many of our children are growing up in a single parent home. Excuse me. So their interactions with outside family may increase. Uh, Trying to encourage positive family relationships as best you can, or help them to learn friendships. They don't always understand why, you know, dad or mom left, or they don't understand why their situation is different than someone else's, but that's something that can be discussed. When we talk about Diana Baumrind, this is important stuff here for you to realize. There are in her research there are 4 parenting styles, and I have the notes all down here, so don't worry about trying to write all this stuff down because it's there for you. Um, Authoritarian, permissive, authoritative, and uninvolved. And they're going to affect the upbringing of the child. There is one that's more positive, and the research says is better. But the second one isn't too bad. Children can still succeed, but the reactions can be different. So let's start with authoritarian. This is the hellfire and damnation parent. You're going to do it my way. You live under my roof. I don't care what you think. You have to do this. That type of thing. They don't necessarily explain anything. This is how it is. You're going to act that way. Now, the problem with that is it's not that children won't turn out to be okay. They can turn out to be perfectly fine, very well disciplined, but they don't necessarily get the opportunity to make decisions on their own because they know once they break some of these rules, there's going to be some sort of punishment or retribution to what they did. Authoritative also has rules and it has guidelines, but when a child breaks those rules, it's not that hellfire and damnation. It's, well, this is why we have this rule. And you can see because you did this, this happened to your little brother, or this happened to your little sister. And you did that because you didn't listen to that rule. And can you understand why we now have that rule? So it's more of an open discussion of why we, make decisions, why we even have the rules, so they can ask questions and they can learn from that. So they can become more independent. Permissive parent then would be, I guess the third on the list. So authoritative would be first, authoritarian would be second. Permissive is they want to be extremely friendly with their child. Basically, they want to be their child's friend, not necessarily their parent. So they can let their child do whatever. My child does no wrong. We don't care. Yeah, you say that my child, you know, did this, but I didn't see it, and they don't do that at home, so I don't believe you. Give them everything they want. You're like, well, my parents didn't give me that, so I'm going to give this to my child. My parents didn't let me stay up late, but I'm going to let my child stay up late. Even though your child needs like 9 hours of sleep, it's okay if they stay up till 3 in the morning and then have to get up the next day at 7 and they're grumpy and they're miserable and they haven't had enough sleep. You only have to eat hot dogs, nothing else. You don't have to eat vegetables. You don't have to eat fruit. Yeah, you just have to eat hot dogs. You can have whatever you want. Candy, you can have as much candy as you want. Just excessively permissive. And then the last one is uninvolved, and that's the one that's the worst. When parents are not involved with the child's life, they, for whatever reason, whether they're so busy because they're working and trying to deal with family and pay all the bills and stresses that come across parents, and maybe their parents are elderly and they're having to take care of that. Whatever the reason, the parent is not involved. Um, there, there are cases all the time in schools that you hear of children that the parents never show up for a game, or they never come to parent conferences. And excuse me, too much talking. Sorry. They just aren't involved in the child's life. The child is doing their first play. Everyone's there, and they're looking out into the audience for their parents, and there's nobody there for them. They decided to stay home because they felt like watching basketball instead of going to see their child in their first play. Little things like that really affect children deeply. Knowing that their parents aren't going to be there, and I always share the story, and I may have mentioned this last time, of one of the teachers who was Teacher of the Year and talked about how one of his seniors asked him to stand in for his parents because they never came to games, and it was parent night. It was the last night, and he would have nobody there with him on the field. And he asked his teacher, who he respected and felt that the teacher cared more for him than his parents, if he would stand in and be his parent for the night. That's really sad that you come away through your entire childhood of believing that your parents don't really care about you. So uninvolved would be the worst of those. The next slide kind of fleshes out what I just talked about. So it gives you like an example of characteristics of authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, and uninvolved. So you can read through that. Again, you don't have to have those memorized, but you should understand those parenting styles. So we find that most of the research that's been done on child raising is actually based on Western culture and Western society. So there's not a lot of independent research that's been done on other cultures. So it really depends on the norm of a culture. And there is no single parenting style that's universally appropriate. That, every single country, every single family should have this type of parenting style. It really does depend on the family and the situation that they are in. Now, this is always the depressing part for me when we do these slides, because it talks about child abuse. And child abuse, regrettably, is a very real thing. At least 5 children are killed by caretakers each and every day. 140,000 others are physically injured each year, and 3 million children are abused or neglected in the United States each year. It just saddens my heart to know that that's happening to our children. Sexual abuse. 500,000 cases occur each year. 1 in 6 boys and 1 in 4 girls will be abused before they turn 18. Most often, the perpetrator is a relative or an acquaintance. perpetrator is typically male heterosexual, but it can be female. And there are dangers to online communications, and this is why parents have to pay attention to what their kids are doing online. There are people out there that they want that child, and they will say anything or do anything in order to get to that child. As you can see, neglect is one of the number one ways of abuse, then physical abuse. Other is a category that can be almost everything or a combination. Medical abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, or unknown. The one case that I had when I was teaching in the junior high, I had a young boy, Stephen, and he knows I tell this story. Uh, Stephen came in and he had all these marks on his face, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Stephen, what happened to you? He said, oh, I disobeyed my dad. And I'm like, okay, how does that have to do with your face? He's like, well, I was riding my dirt bike and I was weaving in and out of cars, and my dad saw me and he grabbed me and he threw me on the ground and he stepped on my face with his boot and pressed and left marks on this kid's face. Yeah, I was calling Childline that day because that's abuse. And, people have different understandings, and you'll have researchers out there that talk about, corporal punishment and, uh, you know, spanking, etc. And we do have the research with that, but that crossed the line. And sometimes those lines are gray or wavy, but that was actual abuse. And it does happen, and it happens way too often. It can occur anywhere. It doesn't matter, if you're wealthy, if you're poor, if you're, from this part of the city, if you're from that part of the city, if you're from this background or what, it happens. Predominantly stressful environments, we see it happening more. Poverty, single parent homes, families with high marital discord. So they're struggling with the relationship of the family right there. The victims themselves tend to be fussy, resistant to control, slow to adapt, overly anxious. Bedwetting is a number one for sexual abuse, and developmental delays. So there are definitely physical and psychological effects on the child who is abused. Why do people abuse? Most parents don't intend to abuse. They're not waking up, oh, I'm going to abuse my kid this day. It just happens. It's that vague line, as I said, of what is permissible or what isn't when it comes to physical punishment. Privacy can lead to more abuse, so people not talking about it. And child rearing in Western cultures is not shared among adults. So it's different backgrounds, different societal expectations, etc. Spanking leads to lower quality parent-child relationships and can result in mental health issues later on. It can lead to delinquency or antisocial behavior, and it teaches children that violence is acceptable. Now, that doesn't mean if you were spanked, you're going to turn out to have all sorts of problems. My mother had a wooden spoon, and I remember that wooden spoon very well. My dad, all he had to do was threaten me with a belt. He never actually hit me with a belt, but he would lift his shirt and I would see the belt, and I knew I better like toe the line. But mom had her wooden spoon, and If I talked back or something, she would go for the wooden spoon, and very rarely, but every now and then I wasn't quite fast enough, and she would nab me on the behind with that wooden spoon. And I turned out to be okay. And I turned out to be pretty respectful after having a respect for that wooden spoon. And after one incident that she ran after me with this spoon, I can't even remember what I did, but I know I talked back to her, and it was not a good situation. And I locked myself in the bathroom, and we only had one bathroom. And after 2 hours of being locked in the bathroom, my mother is like begging me to come out of the bathroom because she had to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, no, unless you put that wooden spoon away forever. And after about 2.5 hours, she put the wooden spoon away and she never took it out again. And anytime we had any type of disagreement like that, we would sit down and talk about it. But it helped, you know, me realize that I was making some mistakes too. But there are others. Physical corporal punishment. When I first started teaching, corporal punishment was still okay in schools. I can remember I had an eighth grade student who stole something from school, and he got caught. And the principal, in front of the entire class, got her paddle, which was this thick wooden paddle that they had drilled holes in it so there would be no wind resistance. So you could get a good whack. And he bent over and got 3 solid whacks. I mean, you could hear everyone was like, oh, oh. Corporal punishment isn't okay like that. You're not going to see that in a school anymore. Even though I've had parents when I taught in junior high, feel free to smack them if you want to. It's like, ah, no, no, I'm not going to smack your child. But um, there are, some things that are permissible and some that just aren't. And once you cross that line, like I said, parents don't necessarily intend to abuse, but it can become abuse uh, quite quickly. That cycle of violence hypothesis is only a third true. Only about a third who were abused will abuse their children. So just because you were abused does not mean that you are going to be an abuser of your own children. And currently, physical punishment like this is considered a human rights violation. Psychological maltreatment is a lot different here because people don't necessarily see this or hear this. Harming a child's behavior or cognitive, emotional, physical functioning, frightening children, belittling them, humiliating them, neglecting them can cause lasting damage to their self-esteem. It can cause lying or misbehavior or underachievement. It can lead to criminal behavior, aggression, murder, or even suicide. Um, Let me pop off of this one for a second. Uh, the worst case that I was a witness to was I had a mother who had one of my cheerleaders at school, and they were there for conferences. And her daughter was a little underachieving, but she was a good kid. She just, she was still kind of finding out who she was. And I told the mother what her grades was, and what I thought could improve it. And she literally turned to her daughter and said, I should have aborted you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you take that back? You just said to your daughter that you should have not had her. That would be something that child would remember all her life. And it was one of the first times that I had literally screamed at a parent. I'm like, what did you say? You know, how dare you? And she's like, I can parent any way I want. I said, but you can't say that, not in front of me and not in this school. I couldn't believe, I'm like, really, what could you possibly say after that? And later on in the year, I talked to the girl and found that she had said things like that to her many times. And I just felt so sorry for this girl, um, that there had to be some other people in her life that gave her positive affirmations, and luckily there were. But it was crushing because that relationship, I was still friends with her. Actually, I'm still friends with her on Facebook, and she now has two children of her own, and but it was lifelong. She never had a relationship with her mom. That kind of ended the relationship there, because you can't take that back. You just can't take that, even though she probably said it in frustration. It wasn't appropriate for what the child did to say that. So when we talk about, what goes on, in homes. It's really sad and frustrating. Let me go back to this. We're almost done. Hang in there. Okay. So resilience. This is wonderful. We have children. There might even be some of you here that have had life like that or situations like that, or people like that. Children who have been in abusive situations, no matter the type of abuse, and they're able to overcome that. They're able to overcome that trauma. We call that resilience. No matter what happened to them, they're able to continue to move on and grow and develop and turn out to be perfectly fine. There are other children, though, that don't have that resilience. They were neglected, they were not cared for, they had psychological abuse instead of physical abuse. Their parents always said negative things about them. This happens. And if we can help children develop the ability to overcome that, then we as teachers and counselors and psychologists have done a damn good job, because then they're going to be okay. Regrettably, some children grow up to be adults that aren't okay because we weren't able to do that, because there was just so much damage to the child. But it's never hopeless. There's always hope. And that's what keeps us going. So, children who are resilient tend to be intelligent, good communicators. They communicate well. They're more easygoing. They tend to be liked by other people, and they decide they're going to make their life. They're going to do their best to become the best that they can be. So review, sample question, and our last section for the night. Moral development, again, our sense of view. There are three as part of Piaget's view. And again, if you look down in the notes, you can see I have them all spelled out down here for you, so you don't have to look them up. We tend to see the first as early moral development is usually occurring between 4 and 7. It's interchangeable. There are some rules. They don't necessarily take those things into account. And then we move into incipient cooperation that tends to to go into effect between 7 and 10, and then usually no earlier, according to Piaget. We see autonomous cooperation where they're making decisions basically on their own. They're, setting the rules and modifying it, and they can come to some agreement with others. Social learning theory, again, this is uh, the stuff with Bandura. Pro-social behavior, teaching children to help others, and they learn best by role models here, so if they're in an environment where they see others, adults, other children, helping others uh, by being with others. So they learn from responsive adults who model behavior, who they see significant others like in the media and music and actors and athletes who model that type of behavior. They can learn society's norms, and they can help develop this sense of they want to help, they want to belong, they want to do things, they care about others. Empathy, caring and understanding what another individual feels. There's a genetic approach saying that children are basically who they are based on genes. Environment plays a role, but just a small role. Whereas the idea of empathy and moral behavior, that's that sense of caring about someone else. And we see that actually start at the early year of one. A child cries, they hear another child cry, and they start crying, and other children start crying, and that whole sense, they're empathizing with what might be going on. They don't understand what's going on. They just kind of join in. And that's something they can do at the age of one. But understanding positive and negative emotions can help develop that sense of what others are feeling, and caring what other kids and adults feel. What they say, words can hurt, things like that. And it comes back to that when they're on the screen time, when they eventually are a little older and they're writing things on, and doing things on Instagram, and texting, etc. You don't see the person's expression. You don't see the reaction to what you wrote. And even though you put that little smiley face at the end, or LOL, you don't know how that actually affected the person. Whereas when you're right there with them, you may realize you've stepped over the line, or you don't necessarily when it's just a screen. Aggression, whether it's intentional to harm someone, sometimes that does occur in preschool. It's usually because they want to attain some sort of goal, like get that toy, or get, that thing that they want, whatever it is. Or they're jealous or angry because somebody got to do something and they didn't get to do it. We tend to see two types of aggression. We tend to see instrumental aggression in boys. That means actually something physical. They do something to the other person. Girls, we tend to see relational aggression. They badmouth them. They talk behind their back. They don't want to be their friends anymore. They get all their other friends to not be their friend to that person. They ridicule them, they make fun of them, they make up lies, etc. The roots of aggression, according to Freud, he says it comes from, our sexual and aggressive instincts. That's that id again. Lorenz says it's because we have this biological type of fighting instinct to just everyone has this, and they can be aggressive at any time. The evolutionary people say that, were aggressive because just like in the rest of the animal kingdom, you have to fight for your mate. And of course, none of these theories are supported by research. None of them. Social learning theory is supported by research, and we kind of talked about Bandura and the Bobo doll last time. And here's some pictures that go with that Bobo doll experiment. So again, for all of you who didn't know what a Bobo doll is, there it is. So, his experiment was designed to see if social learning can produce aggression. Older children came into a playroom. Children were not playing with the Bobo doll because they had no idea what it was. It was sitting in the corner. The older children came in, proceeded to take out the Bobo dolls and pummel them, and then put them back. And while this is going on, all the younger children are like watching, like, wow. And as the older children left, of course, the younger children want to model the behavior of the older children because they really want to be older. So they pull out the Bobo dolls and proceed to pummel the Bobo dolls. They learned aggressive tendencies from other older children. So, you know, Bandura was, part of the movement to put ratings on music and on movies and games and things like that, because children learn from their environment. So does viewing violence on TV matter? Well, there's some, you know, research that says there is a little bit of a correlation between that, yes. But it doesn't mean, if you're listening to music and the song saying kill your mother, doesn't mean you're going to go kill your mother. It could push you in a direction of doing something that's violent if you view a lot of violence. Many parents buy video games that are labeled 18 and older, mature audiences, but their 5-year-old is playing with this video game. And they're seeing violence and they're seeing nudity, and the parents buy it for them because their kid wanted it. And, at that point, if you're going to buy it for your child, hopefully you're at least sitting there with your child discussing what they're seeing. Because at 5, again, there's a more of an understanding that something is fantasy, but at 5, it's still a very thin link between fantasy and reality. So, pro-social behavior, more positive things are much more beneficial to the child. Aggression can stem from how children interpret others' actions, just like adults, how we interpret someone else's behavior. And teaching children to interpret behavior better can help to make them less aggressive. So, how do we reduce aggression in preschool children? Provide opportunities for pro-social behavior and have them to observe pro-social behavior, especially in the home and at school. Don't ignore aggressive behavior. It's not good to hit at any time. Help preschoolers understand and better interpret why something happened. Monitor TV viewing, help them to understand their feelings that they're having, and teach specifically, explicitly, determinedly teach them reasoning and self-control. Everyone can control themselves. They just have to learn. Review, review, review. Sample question, sample short answer question. Okay, so that's the lecture. So you have the rest of the time that we normally would have to class to start working on either looking at the other videos, reading over the test, and You might want to do that, actually. You may want to read over the test questions so you know what you're looking for, as you're listening to the other lectures, or looking at the other PowerPoints. For the people that have not done the milestone activity, you want to do that milestone activity. That should be in this week, at the latest. Everyone who up until like at noon, who I got your milestone activity, I already read and graded and sent you your grade back, on that. So if you sent it in, today, later on, you probably won't get the grade till tomorrow. So most people are doing well so far. Use this time to take that test. Again, highlight your answers or write down that, in the body of an email. Again, just a letter. Don't give me the word, just the letter, or write it on paper and take a nice clear picture of it and send that to me. You have plenty of time to work on it, so you can send it any time that you can within the next week. You want to get that in before next Wednesday, so I can get that graded and get your grades back to you in a reasonable amount of time. Next week, I've already filmed 5-1, 5-2, 5-3. So I'll be doing 6-1, 6-2, and 6-3 live, or at least two of those and part of one, depending on time. But I will have a backup filmed, just in case we don't get them, because they are really long PowerPoints, because it's covering adolescence, basically from 11 to 18-year-old and all the things that go on. And you're not that old. You remember what adolescence is like. So we have a lot of material to cover there. So does anybody have any questions? If
I
not,
have a,
go ahead.
oh, sorry, Professor. I have a quick question. I missed the very beginning. I just want to make sure I didn't miss an assignment. It's just the milestone project due Sunday and the first
Okay.
test due
hmm
Wednesday, right?
By
Okay.
Wednesday.
Thank you so much. Okay.
And again, I did film this
I have
lecture.
a
So
question too.
sure.
What what is the milestone activity? I'm confused.
It was on Blackboard and it's on the syllabus. You had to go on, I suggested Google. It's easier than looking through your book for the different things that occur at the different ages of development. So if you want to look on Blackboard, or if you want to stay around until after class, I can pull it up again, Blackboard, so you can see it, or I could email it to you. Just send me an email and I'll just attach it so you can do that.
Okay, it wasn't the open-ended questions, right? Because you sent that back to me and said that it goes with the test.
Yeah, that is
Okay,
something
so I did
completely
the
different.
wrong thing.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you did the test part.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. I see
but
now.
that's okay. Not a problem. You still got time.
Professor, I have a question too.
Sure.
Where are the grades for that milestone assignment? Because I handed mine in, I think, last weekend, like after the
If
first
well,
test.
I email your grades. I always email your grades. So if
Oh,
you didn't get
because
if you didn't get an email from me, I would resend that milestone assignment.
you had sent back that you received it. So, okay, I'll just
Yeah.
resend it in then. Okay.
Send it again because most of them I graded
Okay.
on the spot. But last week I was doing finals for my seniors at Central, so it's possible I might have just put it in the file and graded it and didn't send you your grade. But
I also,
I think all the ones that I've read, everyone has had an A so far. There was only one that came in blank and they just sent the wrong file. So other than that, but like I said, send me an email and I'll be glad to send you your grade. I
I
always
also
I
emailed
always
mine on
send
Sunday.
yeah, I always send the grades by email so you know right away as soon as I grade it.
Okay, I emailed mine on Sunday and I didn't get anything back. So do you want me to also resend it?
Yes.
Okay, because I had also emailed you before that because I had a question about it and I didn't hear anything back either, so I wasn't
Okay,
sure.
so if I didn't get both, that's unusual that I wouldn't have gotten both because I'm usually pretty good about within 48 hours. So let me give you, do you have a pen?
I can grab
Paper?
one
Or
because
you
I
can just
just copied
write it
and
in your
pasted the email from the syllabus right into the.
okay, I was going to give you a second email just in case for some reason you're not getting through by that one, and occasionally it does happen.
Okay, I'm ready whenever.
Okay, SHABLOU at earthlink.net. Copy and paste it to both of them because one of them will go through. But
Okay,
if I'm
thank you.
if I'm having issues with for some reason not getting your email, then at least I'll get it through the other one, and then I'll just attach that email to all my other correspondence for you, so you'll get it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question about the project. The
Sure, the
one,
big paper?
yeah. Um, you have a place in Blackboard where we can see like all the requirements for that.
Yes. Yes, it's actually on your syllabus.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just making
Yeah,
sure.
it's spelled out, and you have a lot of flexibility because you get to decide what you're going to observe and who you're going to observe and what questions you're going to ask. And there is no right or wrong way to do it other than you have to have at least one full page double-spaced type for each of the 7 people.
Okay. I also had a quick question about for the baby, do we just observe the baby, right? Like we can't really ask any questions.
Yeah, you can't really ask any questions. I mean, it's 0 to 3, so it depends what age group once you get to, like 2, you can actually talk to them, so you could ask questions. But if you're using a baby, and if you're unable to do a physical observation with the baby, you could also interview the parent, but you would be asking questions about the baby.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Yes, but I'll wait till everyone is off.
Okay. Any others? Well, have a good night, everyone. You got a lot of work ahead of you. Like I said, 16-week course into pretty much 5 weeks. But so far, you're doing a good job, so let's hope it continues. Have a good night. I will stay on if anyone has questions.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, guys. Enjoy the nice weather. I think we're supposed to have nice
Thanks.
weather for the week.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night. Take care.
Okay, so I do have a question.
Mhm.
I wanted to, so since you have everything up on Blackboard, I wanted to just do everything and turn it all in by June 19th because I got accepted into the nursing program and I would like to work as much as I can with the little bit of time I have and just prepare myself for the start on August 17th. And I have 2 other classes besides yours. And I'm asking my other 2 professors the same thing. Like if I can, because all of you guys have everything up on Blackboard. And if I can do it all and just turn it all in by June 19th, if you would be okay
The,
with
the
that.
only thing you can't do ahead of time would be the tests.
Okay. But everything else I can.
Yeah, everything else you can do ahead of time, and that's not a problem. But the tests have to come in on the test day because you have to take it live.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
But other than
Sounds
that,
good.
sure, you can do everything else.
Okay. Would I just need, so if I do everything else, do I need to come to class the other days or just come to class on the days that the tests are going?
Well, as long as you'd have to come to class the days that the test is going and make sure you have everything in by the date. So
Mhm.
that would be, find to do that.
Okay.
So no, you could read all the PowerPoints. Like I said, a lot of the stuff is filmed. Even links for the films are on Blackboard. So I think like the whole section on 9, already have filmed and links there. So you can choose to watch them at your own pace. I've already turned in the attendance for the course, so you can't be thrown out of class because of not attending. So you're okay.
Okay, good, because I've already started all 3 of the test questions, but I just have them, in my file. I've done
Mhm.
the game that we are assigned. I'd already turned in my milestone assignment. So I'm pretty much like
Yeah.
already doing everything. I just wanted
Yeah, you
it
can
was
give
okay if I
if you
could.
want, you can give me everything all at one time. Like I said, except
Okay,
the
cool.
test. So you have to do the test on the test day because it's live. And usually it's the
Okay, cool.
second half of class. So
Okay.
if you don't want to listen to the lecture before, you could log in or just send me an email and I can give you a rough idea because it depends on how many
Okay.
questions people ask me. But typically, we would go till probably like 7:15-ish, and
Hmm.
then you could take the test. So I
Okay,
usually
that's
teach the
fine.
first half and then give the test. And you just take as long as it takes you to take the test, and then you're done.
Okay,
So,
cool. All right,
okay?
sounds good to me. Yeah. Thank you.
Anytime. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.